Hey guys, me, Richard Kaufman. Welcome back to Vertical Momentum. Guys, this is a true honor for me. One of my friends, Jimmy, we've been friends for years. I finally got
Hmm.
the show. Get him is like trying to find a president. I'm so grateful. So we're going to be talking about how to have surgery without the knife. And if you watch till the very end, we're going to be giving you something. So make sure you stay till the very end. Jimmy, my brother, what is
My
going
man, it's such a pleasure. Yeah, the last couple of years, I've been a little bit underground back and forth from Brazil as I was living there during the pandemic, and you know, it was quite the experience. So yeah, I'm back in Santa Monica, California now, so I'm a lot easier to get a hold of than bouncing around internationally. So yeah,
on?
thank you, man. It's such a pleasure and honor, and anyone who has interest in healing and getting pain free, you know me, I love it. I
And
love
it's
it.
cool because you work on a lot of famous people. We'll talk about that later. I'm not going to drop any
Yeah.
names. I'll let you do that. But
Yeah, I've
first,
been real fortunate. Every
tell,
aspect of life between children and entertainers has been cool.
so tell us where you come from, where did you grow up, and how did you become the man that you are today?
Yeah, I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania, a small coal mining community called Honesdale. It was the birthplace of the first steam locomotive, the Stourbridge Lion. And it's just like small town America. It has a cliff overlooking town. And in the wintertime, they let up a star or a cross. A lot of history, and my grandfather there served the community for most of his life after he served the state, after he served his country. So um, I call it small town America, you know what I mean? Where people are real family oriented, people spend a lot of time outdoors, and people are, I guess the term I should use is real grounded. You know what I mean? Because when you travel around to these cities, you're like, whoa, everyone everyone in different places grounds themselves in different ways. So I grew up, my father owned an asphalt paving business, so from a young age I was doing hard labor, and that allowed me, to be able to really stand heat. And years later, it made my hands strong. I realized in my childhood how much of an effect it really did have on my career. And my mom was a first grade teacher, and when she was a child, she dealt with severe scoliosis and had to have that whole outfit on when she was a kid. And I grew up, I guess, what they call empath. I've been told I'm like a hyper empath, which means clairvoyant, clairaudient. I can kind of feel others' pain, if you will. I could feel others' energy, and that really led me, in the career of rehabilitation and pain relief and fitness. And that's kind of what, growing up working 7 days a week for my dad, being outside, as you age, you have to learn and kind of break those patterns because you just assume you're supposed to work every day, and when you're helping people heal from pain, it can become very addicting to become a workaholic. You know what I mean? With the gratitude that you feel. So I've had to also learn a lot of balance over the years. How many clients I take on in a day, and especially when I'm traveling around the country and stuff. Um,
I remember,
I go
like,
ahead.
um, I've been in the health and fitness industry for over 30 years,
Hmm.
and I can remember the exact moment that I started getting into health and fitness. It was actually a bodybuilding magazine with arms
Hmm.
up, and read that whole thing back and forth, front to back, like 5 times. Can you remember the exact moment where you started to think, wow, I love health and fitness?
Yeah, I remember seeing the movie, between Rambo and Conan, and I was like, who the heck is this? I was like, you can look like that? And I can't remember what bodybuilding magazine I first picked up, if it was Muscle and Fitness or Flex magazine with Jay Cutler. And yeah, I was 12 years old, and I think that was the day I started lifting my dad's K-Tron sand-filled weights. I was a big basketball player back then, and I played football all the way till junior year, and then just really focused on my basketball skills. And once I got into college, that's when I really got after weight training. And I wasn't doing asphalt work all summer. Ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches a day. I was still losing weight, with the amount of work I was doing with my dad. So it was pretty wild. Growing up, I had so many magazines and collages and posters on my walls. And, unbeknownst to me, that was kind of a vision board, because many years later, I realized, whoa, a lot of those people that I looked up to became clients and friends. And 10 years later, I was like, whoa, I was a ski patroller at some of the pictures of the snowboarders on Brighton Resort that were on my wall. I didn't even know it at the time. So it was really cool. I always had big dreams. And even from a young age, I was a student mediator. I always wanted to help people through their issues and stuff. And, was a leader at times, captain of the basketball team. And yeah, I had an older sister and a younger sister, and I think that also kind of shaped me in being protective, aside from, just being sensitive with my feelings, and with that, obviously being sensitive to others' feelings as well, so.
Now, do you believe, as a young age, like for me, I started getting into bodybuilding and fitness, and then I started reading medical books because my mom was a nurse. So I started to want to learn all the terms that they're talking about. So did you become a reader? Did you become an avid reader?
I was a little bit different. I was more experiential, while I did, read a lot of books that, a lot of Tony Robbins books and a lot of things like that. The Secret growing up really shaped me and different things. But when it came to my work, initially I planned to be a physical therapist. But then once I finished therapy school and back to University of Utah, I realized, well, wait a second, I aced the other school and loved it, and you'd have your class in the morning, and then you'd work on each other, and you implemented and worked on what you discovered, and then, or what you learned. And then when I got into the University of Utah, it was like the same lab, the same instructor, memorize a month of stuff by Friday. And you're like, whoa, this is a little bit different learning experience here. And at the time I was 20 years old working in 24-hour fitness, and I loved it. I absolutely loved working at the gym, getting people involved in fitness. And, I wasn't pushing around 300-degree wheelbarrows full of asphalt either. I was in air conditioning. So I became very good at what I did. And they offered me a general manager position, before I was even 21. And I was like, wow. I was like, this is what I wanted to do before I was 35. So I said to my dad, I said, I'm not motivated. I'm kind of wasting your money out here in college. He's like, you're coming home going blacktop. And I was like, no, I've got a career, I'm in fitness. And he's like, what? And it was cool. Out of 400 some facilities, I was opening clubs from a pre-sale and really understanding the ins and outs of fitness. But then after a few years of that, I realized corporate America wasn't necessarily for me. So I went into privatized training. And that's when I really started utilizing a lot of my healing work on my personal clients. I always had roommates, throughout my 20s that I'd worked on that were pretty prominent bodybuilders. But once I really went self-employed and went down my spiritual path, that's when I realized how powerful, assisting people out of pain and more or less giving them their power back was, compared to just assisting people to lose weight, which I really loved. So, I think at this point in my career, I've probably had 50,000 plus hours of conversation between fitness and my healing work. And you start picking up patterns and movement patterns and psychological stuff and traumas that people have been through. And so it always fascinated me, not only with my clients, but a lot of the trials that I faced in my own life too, So yeah, while I didn't necessarily seek out the information beforehand, I guess, throughout my career, it really opened me up once I started really meeting a lot of healers and a lot of theta healers and psychologists, TPS meridian tappers and things I never heard of before. And these people were giving me information about my childhood like there's no way they could have known, through muscle testing. And that always fascinated me, So I guess in a way, when I have conversations with physical therapists, I had one come into the office recently. I'll tell you a story. This guy is super muscular, one of the most prominent places in LA he works at. And I started pointing out all his imbalances. And I'm like, hey, man, you got any problems with those legs? You see the external rotation in your foot? And he's like, you can see that? He's like, dude, you're speaking my language. I'm like, yeah, we're in the same business, just different parts of it. You know, I have so much respect for doctors from every walk of life. So he let me do a treatment on him, and he's watching. He's like, bro, that's pro stuff you're doing there. He didn't know who I was. And it was cool, you know, and I started explaining to him different emotions that can be trapped in the body and different things. And he's just like, who are you? So he brought me down to his office, and it was amazing, dude. I totally nerded out. He had like a $300,000 treadmill that was donated from UCLA, because at his office, all these, you know, huge corporations donate this fancy equipment so they can get the feedback and case studies and, you know, prove that their stuff works. So he put me on this treadmill and printed out a report of all my imbalances, all my weak points. And I was like, I was nerding out. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like Toys R Us for fitness and health nerds, you know? And he's showing me all this equipment I've never seen. And he goes, I had to show you this because I don't think you understand that of 100 people that I've graduated with, I would not refer them any person for manual therapy before I'd refer them to you. The only doctors that can see what you can see are the old school ones that have been doing this half their lives. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, man. He's like, plus we hardly do manual therapy. I was like, what? He's like, be thankful you're not a physical therapist, because, you know, as he pointed out, I kind of had to figure out myself how to fix clients. And I call it, you know, not trial and error, more so trial and efficiency. And it has so much to do, not with just the physical, a lot of times with the emotional. You know, people can store pain in the body through their fascial tissue, through their traumas, through you know, memories of car accidents and things. And that became really, really fascinating. You know, I had a call from a very prominent doctor years ago, and I remember being all grumpy. It's like 7 a.m. and this guy's calling me, and I'm like, do I want to take this call? And then I realized, like, from what I understood, it was like $100,000 to work with this guy, and you got put on a waiting list. And I'm like, wait a second, he's calling me. And this guy studied genome therapy, and he was so intelligent, like he'd make jokes, and like I could hardly understand he was being humorous, because just the level of intelligence this guy had. And he said something that kind of hit me. He said, you know, Mr. Bluff, with what I do for work, so many people from different walks of life come and see me, but they don't leave happy. And he goes, but with you, Mr. Bluff, every client I send you, whether it be a producer or a business person, no matter what level of elite people are, every single person leaves your office happy. And he's like, I envy that. You know, so it was a really interesting take on that, where, you know, he's like, can I ask what you do? And he says, yeah, I allow work to be done through me. Obviously, after an assessment, I look at people's alignment. I can see the imbalances. I typically know where people are in pain before they even tell me. And I just allow the work to be done through me. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, I had to hear it for myself. And then he asked me, he's like, can I refer you my clients? And I'm like, absolutely, I would love to work with you. So it's interesting, because I always set the intention to do what I did, but not until I started working with some pro bodybuilders. You know, Victor Martinez was the first gentleman I worked with in pro bodybuilding. And back then, I just wanted to see what I was capable of. I didn't know. I had all these doctors in Salt Lake City telling me, he's like, no, like, you don't understand. There's 100 people in the zip code that do chiropractic care. I've never met anyone that does what you do. And I was always raised to be humble, right? So I'm like, okay, whatever. And over the years, it's been the same thing. You know, I had the incredible opportunity, you know, to introduce myself to Tony Robbins people. And, you know, I did an assessment on him, you know, a couple of weeks after, when I had the opportunity to meet him when he was flying in and out. And I did an assessment on him, and I looked at his assistants, and I'm like, holy cow, I'm glad I said something to your people, because I went to the Unleash the Power within event. Amazing, amazing. And I said, I thought you guys were working with the best in the world. I'm glad I said something. And I didn't realize, like, passive aggressively at the time, like, he has a Rolodex of therapists and healers in 105 countries. So he was like, I've never felt this before. I'm like, yeah, we just met 10 minutes ago, remember? And I was being a smartass. And he's like, no, I've never felt this before. Like, he was stunned. And I'm like, well, I know. But, you know, little things like that. It was just like kind of little reminders. And you know, just like when I went to the Amazon forest this last year, the chief's wife, she said, I met one man with gifts like yours. And, you know, side note, when these people from the forest are telling you have gifts, you're just like, it was so humbling just to be in their presence, you know, with how much, just the purity, the bloodlines that go back from the story of when their first tribe member passed away. Like, the experiences have been unbelievable. But anyway, she said, yeah, I met one man like you with your gifts, and he had taken on a lot of energy from clients, and he really needed to come to the forest to heal himself. Unfortunately, that man passed away during the pandemic, you know, and it's interesting. It's weird. You know, my dad said years ago, he's like, you know, son, you speak rocket science, but I'm going to tell you something. You might just want to speak rocket science to rocket scientists, because a lot of people don't understand what you're doing. And I said, I get that. I said, but they don't really need to understand, you know? So that's why it's so cool when I have the opportunity to be on, you know, incredible podcasts like this. You know, I haven't done a lot of videos over the last 5 years. And I had one of my early videographers message me, you know, a couple months ago. He's like, bro, what do we do with all this old bodybuilding footage? You know, the tour you didn't even get posted. I said, man, I don't know. I you know, was working with a lot of pro bodybuilders, and then I went to Hollywood, and then I went to the forest, and I said, my work has shifted so much. And he's like, bro, you just gave me the perfect bullet points to a mini documentary. And I was like, yeah, do it, man, whatever, you know? So it's cool, you know, and
Now, we've been friends. I'm probably thinking at least 7 or 8 years.
yeah.
I think we really connected the day that Chester Bennington committed suicide. You made a video.
Man, you just gave me goosebumps when that happened, you know? Yeah, bro, I really took that hard because their music really spoke to me, like I'm sure it did many others growing up, where there's just a couple verses and a couple songs that you're like, okay, I get what you're saying. I feel that, you know? And man, and I had a couple of real close friends in my life pass around that time that had a huge impact on my life, you know, and yeah, I saw that video pop up in my memories, and so many people have commented over the years. I really should reshare it, but I think it was something along the lines of like why I didn't commit suicide,
Yeah.
you know, and things like that. And I don't like to use that word lightly, you know, because it's such a, I don't want to say misunderstood thing, but I also understand depression, you know, a lot. I've experienced a lot of depression in my life just because of, you know, the gifts. You know, unfortunately, the sensitivity comes with, you know, some people call gifts, others their weaknesses until you realize they're gifts, you know. And yeah, that really affected me. A ton of people shared that video because a lot of people don't understand people's struggles. You know, I'm fortunate that throughout the years when I was going through some major shifts in my life, you know, before you realize you're going through major shifts, I was really fortunate. I had to get out of bed because I had someone waiting for me to heal them. So I had to show up, not for me, but for my client at times, you know, or otherwise, man, there's hard days where when you can feel everything and see everything and everyone's in pain. And, you know, there's days where people message me from 5-6 different cities, let alone countries, and I can feel their pain. So I've really had to learn how to observe people without absorbing, you know, kind of like, you know, do I feel bad for someone? Well, I try to feel compassion for people, not feel anything less than love, because otherwise I will literally feel bad for someone. You know what I mean? and it's been interesting through sessions over the years. They talk about people having an emotional release when you release pain in someone's body. And there's been times where that emotional release hit me, where I was just working on a power lifter or one of my musicians' backs, and I'm like, why am I crying? You know what I mean? So fascinating, right? And
like I have a friend, they were a massage therapist, and they
mm-hmm,
would come home, and sometimes they would be so emotional, they would be so tired because
mm-hmm,
they would have a negative person on their table, and they would soak up all that negative energy. And
yep,
even if it was just a 1 hour session, it seemed
yep,
like a 10 hour session. So
yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because in a book, A Course in Miracles, it's explained that, when you hit Christ time, there's some hour sessions which do feel like 5 hours because it's almost like, how did that happen? How did I do that? And I kind of chuckle and like, oh, that wasn't me that did that work. A lot of the times, like I said, I try to take my ego out of it and just be an empty container for my clients. But absolutely, when you're empathic and you feel, right? I had a client in the office, I think last month, whose father passed away, and I was working on her feet, and I was just bawling. I was just trying not to be emotional because, like I said, during my treatments, I open myself, just like Elvis did, and I just give everything I can emotionally, physically, spiritually. And it's interesting. It's kind of not been a surprise, but at times, 5, 10 years ago, when some of my videos really started going viral around the world, and people were like, "What are you doing? I've never seen anyone manipulate ligaments or tendons." Only then it was where people really wanted to start learning from me, and I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, I'd love to teach." I didn't realize I was doing something so drastically different. But I tell you, when people approach me, oh, I want to do what you do. I'm like, do you want to produce those after pictures, or do you want to be in pictures with, those cool people who've got big followings? Do you want to go through 20 years of blistered fingers, to be able to do that with your fingertips? And I almost kind of push back at people because it's very emotional. But it can at the same time be the most beautiful, powerful thing. Watching someone come in just feeling horrible. I've had people come in that I didn't realize at the time they already finished their wills and admitted to me in the third or fourth treatment that they already had a date. They had enough liquid painkillers to clear out a West Hollywood zip code. And after that gentleman's first session, he went outside and he started laughing. He had an emotional release, and he danced for the first time in 10 years. He just had such horrible sciatica, and I'm just like, well, yeah, man, you're shaped like an S. You're not supposed to be shaped like a letter of the alphabet. So it's interesting. A gentleman yesterday he wants to join the military, but he's got really bad scoliosis. And his father said, "Hey, is there anything you can say to him?" And I said, "I can." I said, "But you have to understand, this is something that he has to believe in. You can't do that for him. And it's one thing if this guy was working 3 jobs just to pay for his healing, but his parents are also providing, the healing. So just that little bit of value is different." And he's like, I said, "There's nothing magical that I can say. Half his healing is coming from his belief that he can be healed, right? And can you help him?" I said, "I absolutely can." And I called him. I said, obviously continue to do jujitsu when you have scoliosis might not be the smartest thing. And I said, there's a lot of famous people I could tell you I worked on, and I could tell you that people come from all over the world. But I told him a story about a guy who came into my office in El Segundo years ago. This guy walks in and he goes, "Mr. Bluff, no offense, but I don't think you can help me." And I said, "Okay." I said, "What do you want to do for lunch?" "What? What do you mean?" I said, "Bro, I'm booked." I said, I respect where you're at. I said, but other people also trust in the process. And I'm booked with people from all over the world that have been saving up for who knows how long to come see me. I said, so you're so what it really is ignorance on your part. And I said, don't take the wrong way. You just don't understand what I do all day. And I said, some people paint houses. If you hired me to paint a house, what are you skeptical about? That I'm not going to get paint on the floor, or that I'm going to paint the whole house in one day? Or what's the skepticism? I'm a sculptor. I sculpt the human body. It's just a matter of how many layers of tissue there are to get through, right? And also sleep patterns and holding patterns, and not recreating what sometimes created that pain to begin with. So anyway, long story short, the guy who came into the office, he says, well, oh my gosh, I'm preventing my own healing. Yeah, yeah. And he's like, well, will you still work on me? And I said, I'd love to. Are you ready to be healed? And it was a shoulder issue. You know what I mean? He had his arm up over his head. He had full range of motion. That's that. But I can also have so much compassion because this gentleman and many others have been through multiple doctors that are willing to do surgeries without necessarily doing a proper assessment and looking at this guy's arm, where it's like, dude, it's internally rotated and you sleep on it every night. You know what I mean? Are we going to change this pattern? And, you know, so on and so forth. To me, a lot of common sense things. But a lot of people go through months of physical therapy getting nowhere, so they show up defeated. So I have a lot of compassion for that.
All right. So first, I want to, before we get, because I want you to think on this for a second. I have a lot of people that watch this are veterans, first responders.
So much respect for servicemen. I'm named after my dad's best friend who passed away now with the Purple Heart. So my grandfather, great grandfather were both in the military. So much respect.
So I want to talk about them in a minute, but first I want to thank our sponsors. Without them, the show doesn't go on. As you guys been seeing, I've been sipping on this energy drink right here. It's called Physics Zero.
Amazing.
All energy, no crash, tastes like Sprite, and no sugar for a diabetic like me. It's pretty amazing. So if you like energy drinks, check them out. Also, I was telling Jimmy that I'm on it. We started a brand new company called SavageShakers.com. If you love shaker cups, and everybody knows, if you're in fitness, everybody's got 3 or 4 shaker cups, and we always lose that little metal ball. Now we actually include 3 or 5 every shipment that comes through. But amazing. 10% of everything sold goes to help veterans struggling with PTSD and traumatic. So we're always giving back. And now this one, I know this might touch your heart, Jimmy. We have a friend of ours called Maxwell Soaps. They're based out of Los Angeles, California. They make soaps that are detergent free, that are all natural.
Love it.
And hemp. But 100, and what they do is every time they sell a bar of soap, they give one away to help clean up the homeless population in Los Angeles.
That's beautiful.
So guys, if you love soap, if you love natural soap, you don't want that sticky feeling, check out Maxwell Soaps. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, that's huge, man. I've had to change my soaps throughout the years completely because, you know, using some of the dial soaps and different soaps with the different chemicals in them, by the end of the day, I have a chemical burn, you know, because I'm so hypersensitive to it. So that's huge. That's huge. I can't use normal deodorants. I can't use normal detergents, dishwasher stuff. You know, and side note, my wife is a rep with doTERRA, and these guys have like the purest plant oils there are. Many of them, they have relationships with the actual tribes of the forest.
Wow.
And it's incredible because we've had to change a lot of the way we do things because I'm so hypersensitive, even to the foods up here, processed foods and things. My body's just like, no, doesn't agree with, you know. So I think that's huge. And she was telling me about I think it was an umbilical cord that a doctor had tested on birth, and the umbilical cord had like 280 chemicals in it for a newborn child. 280 toxins. So we don't realize, you know, growing up, eating Lucky Charms and all these foods. Now I'm like, wait, why is Mountain Dew banned in 100 countries? And the stuff that came out in Skittles recently, like,
Yeah.
whoa, we don't realize epigenetics and what it's doing to us, because we literally are what we eat.
Yeah.
So my wife and I, after we moved back up here, we have a live water delivered from a natural spring source, that gets delivered to us every week. And it's having a healthy diet's it's a staple. It really is. And, as Americans, we can either deal with what we have going on, or we can hide it with, sex, drugs, rock and roll, food, drugs, addiction, TV even, so yeah, I'm excited to talk about all that. And again, the military guys, I have so much compassion for what they go through. It's just unbelievable.
But now,
Unbelievable. That and police officers, what they
yeah,
deal with in a single day of their job. Couldn't
yeah,
do it.
like for me, I'm a suicide survivor, and I talk to a lot of veterans and first responders, and a lot of us, think, okay, I'm going to take a pill, and I'm going to get better, and that's
Right.
not the way it is. And a lot of it is you have to do a lot of the inner work, even inner
Yep.
work. And like you
Yep.
said, that gentleman, if you believe that you can't be helped, you're not going to be helped. So have you, had people on your table, first responders, veterans, or people struggling with post-traumatic stress?
Oh my God. Yeah. I had a gentleman years ago that really, him and his mom actually shaped my career. He came in and he was pretty built like a bodybuilder. I mean, he was a muscular guy and his shoulders were rolled forward, and his spinal erectors had to have been a couple inches thick. And he just, apparently he was behind enemy lines. And I don't know if his carabiner didn't catch or something, but he basically fell out of the helicopter a couple stories and broke his back. And he just came from a $50,000 a month pain clinic. And coincidentally, apparently there's a pain pill that is non-addictive out there, but no insurance covers it. Go figure. Um, and he looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he's like, Jimmy, I don't want to be a drug addict. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I said, let's not judge ourselves. Right now, you're trying to live. I said, when you don't need these, then we won't need them. And we'll work with your doctor. And, getting my license in Utah was interesting because everyone was very, very conservative. So I'd be like, go ahead and leave your undergarments on. But sometimes when people are religious, their undergarments cover everything. So I'd have to be more specific, right? I think it was about the third treatment. He came in and I'm looking at his abdomen. I was like, I have to release your abs, bro. This is one of the early years of my career. And I got in there and he looked at me and he starts crying and he's like, I feel no pain. Because a lot of times, not only does the abdominals, if we're sitting here and you pull yourself forward, what does that do? Well, that compresses your back. And a lot of people might not understand your abdomen and your psoas muscles. It is said they can also store a lot of pent up emotions. When we get anxiety, what do we do? Our stomach flexes, right? So a lot of people just had anxiety for half their life. So they're literally holding on to that anxiety and those emotions physically. Makes sense, right? So I think after that, he cut his dose in half, like overnight, and then little by little came off completely. It was amazing, guy. It was amazing. And he sends his mom in. And I don't know, she might have been in her 70s, had curly gray hair. And she shows up and she's just, looks at me all angry. And mind you, I was still bodybuilding back then a little bit more. So I was like 270 with a mohawk. And she looks at me, she's like, I don't know about this. And I said, ma'am, I have so much respect for your son. I'm a mama's boy. I accept your judgment for my appearance. And I said, I'm booked for a month, but your son really wanted to get you in as soon as we could. So I'll tell you what, let's go 20 minutes. If you like the work, we'll keep going. If not, no big deal. no harm, no foul. I won't even charge you. I'll go to lunch. So we start working and find out, she's a Jehovah's Witness, and she's stubborn in her ways. And, they say never argue with people about politics or religion. Well, sometimes I just kind of like to poke here and there. And I found out that this woman's husband just passed. Let me tell you something, man. There's no difference between a 50-mile-an-hour head-on collision and losing someone you love. I felt it. I felt it in my fingertips, So I said, listen, my goals are your goals. She goes, I just want to walk around the block. That's all I want. I just want to walk around the block like I used to with my husband. And I said, well, that's what we're going to do. Right. So she took on so much pain, and you can imagine what people go through. We all do. We're humans. So she leaves, and I'm like, okay, I guess that went okay. And she ended up scheduling another one. And I was like, gosh, that's kind of weird. So she comes in the following week, and I come up just exhausted, building my business, working 20-hour days, stressed out of my mind. And I open the door, and there's a woman who appears in front of me with a brand new haircut, makeup, lipstick, purple jumpsuit, new Velcro shoes. And she looks at me, she's like, I've been thinking about you, and gives me a hug. Now, mind you, I'm like stopping and I'm like looking behind me, like, is she talking to me? Like, we're the only ones there. I was so confused. It's like, what happened to this person? This isn't even the same person. So I was so confused about how upset and angry at the world she was the week before. And now she looked like she was 10 years younger, and she was happy. So she's in getting ready, getting herself on the table, and I'm, cleaning myself up, washing my hands, and I'm just like crying. 270-pound jack bodybuilder or whatever, crying. And I'm sitting there like, why am I crying? It was gratitude. I simply felt gratitude for showing up and giving everything I could. And it changed her life. And from that day on, I was like, oh my gosh, I just want to feel this, if this is what it takes. I just want to help people however I can. Like, it's not about me. It never really was, and that really shaped my career. And, like I said, I introduced myself to Victor Martinez really just because I wanted to see what I was capable of with a human at that extreme. And he had broken his arm wrestling, and I introduced myself to him at one of the expos. I flew myself there and worked on him a few hours, and I get a message the following week, and he's like, yo, you're going to meet Busta Rhymes. I want you to come to New York City. And I'm looking at my buddy, who is a real big advocate of my work, one of the doctors, who kept telling me, he's like, dude, no one does what you do. And I was like, come on, bro, whatever. And I said to him, like, I think I need to go to New York. And he's like, yeah, I think you do. And he's like, I'm like, there's a snowstorm, and my wife at the time could have got me a free ticket, but she just wrote off like, there's no way you're getting there. But I saw a ticket online for like $50 less than I had in my freaking bank account. And I looked at it and I'm like, when's the last time I was offered this opportunity? So it's one of those crossroads in life that you hit where you're like, I can stay here, I can jump. So I said, hell with it. I got on a plane 2 hours later, and that weekend I got introduced to Steve Weinberger, the president of the IFBB, and we were posing with John De La Rosa and just a lot of incredible athletes back in Jersey. Man, they don't mess around in Jersey. They got something different in the water back there, bro.
Yep. And my favorite bodybuilding show used to be the New York Pro.
Agree.
Amazing.
Bev is such an incredible human being. Her and Steve have done nothing but treat me with love and respect all these years. And, we're sitting there posing, and he's looking at him, and I always like to make up his accent. It's like, your freaking injured arm is bigger and more strided than your good arm. And and everyone looks at me, and I'm like, that's good, right? They just were confused, and it was cool. He introduced me to Jay Cutler, who Jay I always looked up to, and next thing you know, I'm working at Jay at his house in Vegas, and it was crazy. Before they messed with the algorithm, I just put up a post on Instagram at like 10 at night in California, which was like 1 a.m. in New York. And I'd be like, yo, New York, I'm coming. Let me know if you need some healing. Dude, by 10:30 my time, I'd have 30 appointments booked, like within minutes. So it was crazy, when I was doing a lot of traveling. And that's when I realized, like, whoa, maybe I am doing something a little bit different,
But now
But it was, go
let's go
ahead.
back for a second, because like my T-shirt says, "Today I decided," and
Hmm.
the three most important words in the English language are "Today I decide." You could have
Hmm.
decided that day, we don't really have the money, so I'm not going to take the chance. And
Yeah.
you could have not, done what you're doing now. I mean, you would still do it, but you wouldn't have had that little kick in the ass. So please, sometimes making those decisions.
Yeah, sometimes I kind of envy people that have the same job, go to the same place and teach year after year after year after year. That's not necessarily been my path. I don't know. I've always tried to continue going deeper in my own personal healing, and in turn bring all that healing and what I learned through, different people here, but especially other countries, to take my clients' healing as well to the next level. So yeah, there's been some major crossroads in my life where I followed my heart, and maybe that wasn't the right decision, but for me it had to be that decision. But that doesn't mean that following my heart cost me everything, or at least I should say maybe the things at that point in time that could have been holding me back from moving forward in life. The
Oh,
cars, the homes, they come and go. You know what I mean? And when I moved from Salt Lake to LA, I didn't know anyone. I'm like, I had a shaman come in and she couldn't open her mouth and she was getting surgery. And if her bacteria infection in her molar would have went into her body, it would have went into her brain. So she had to have this emergency surgery. So I got in there and opened up her jaws. She's like, "Can I do a session with you?" And I was like, "Sure." And again, she started telling me stuff like no one knew, right? She just had gifts. And she's like, "I see you moving to LA in 6 months." And I was like, "Girl, you're crazy." It's like, I just put down my life savings on a rent to own home in Draper, Utah. I just paid off my equipment in my private training studio, Truest Potential. Like, I've got 2 more years on the lease. 2 months. 2 months. I moved everything. I said, okay. So if this is what it takes for me to move forward, then I'll do that. And I was traveling to different cities, but there's been some times in my life, yeah, I put everything on the line. Maybe not realizing it at the time, but that's what it took for me to move forward in my career.
so
Even
let's
this last year during the pandemic, bro, it was crazy. It's
so
crazy
now
how everything went down.
because like we talked about on Saturday, and I had such a great conversation. That was so fun. But it's amazing how you just decided that, hey, I'm going to the Amazon. See you. Wouldn't want to be you.
Yeah, when you said that, I just got goosebumps. It was interesting because I was down there on a spiritual retreat with Philip Bandera, who's been a psychologist for 40 years, working with different, sacred medicines. And what you learn in 2 weeks, I don't even know if it'd be possible with some degrees. You know what I mean? Just what you learn, the knowledge that these people have acquired working with indigenous and stuff. And I was on Bumble, and Maria reached out, and hit on me, and I was just like, wow, this girl's really cute. And I said to my friends, I was like, when's the last time, it was like one of the situations like the Cairo office, when's the last time a pro bodybuilder wanted to fly me to New York? I said to myself, I was like, when's the last time I was on a date in a foreign country? I was like, yeah, why not? And I went and picked her up the one night, and her building name was California. And I'm a real spiritual guy. I see, signs and synchronicities and different things in my life. I'm like, that's weird. And yeah, I ended up meeting Maria 3 days before the lockdown. I skipped my flight home, and I was so overwhelmed, realizing like, whoa, I really have, you know, an endless ability here to reach higher levels of spirituality, learning, teaching, even though I needed a translator, and my own personal healing. Brazil is just so different. It's so different. Um, and I came back. My roommate, his brother, was a famous surgeon here, and they were concerned maybe they had to close a surgical center. He's like, I think we should close our lease. So I stayed, a few days and realized they're going to lock the border down. So I came back to West Hollywood, where I just literally put my life savings again, in a Chevelle Super Sport, my office in Santa Monica Boulevard, and it was decked out perfect. I was working with rock stars, whatever. And my roommate's like, "You want to get your own place?" And I was like, "We're not getting a deposit back, man." And I said, "No." I said to Maria, I go, "You ready for this?" And we just met, but she knew who I was, and she knew what my mission, my goals were. And she's an attorney, so she made some phone calls and realized that we could do a stable union agreement online. So after spending a week together and talking nonstop, for a month, she decided, okay, if this is what it takes for us to try to make this work, let's do this. So we got married online. We got married online to begin dating. And she's like, whatever, dude, if it doesn't work, we'll annul it. I'm like, all right. I'm like, I'm moving countries anyway. Like, what am I doing? I even talked to one of my healers who I've talked to for a decade. And she's like, I thought I was going to be talking you out of this. She's like, no, Jimmy, this is what you're supposed to do. So scary enough, man. I mean, I got no help from the government. I sold everything I could. I gave away just about half my stuff to the neighbors who moved in, who had nothing. Goodwill was closed. I couldn't even donate anything. It was very, very intense, And we got married, and months later, we found out they changed the law 2 days later. Well, what's crazy is after I finally got down through the border lockdown, 2 months after the pandemic started, about 2 weeks after I arrived, the riots went right down my street. There's no way I wouldn't have been involved trying to help someone, So I was like, whoa. So I kind of related to that Ram Dass movie, documentary, Becoming Nobody, where here I had, Ducatis, and I'm in West Hollywood and blah, 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 all that superficial stuff. And my friend's like, what are you going to do if like Rage Against the Machine or one of your clients messages you? I'm like, I'm supposed to sit here and wait for that? That doesn't make sense. If they want me, they can fly me in, So yeah, I got down to Rio only to realize, like, wow, the impact over the next, 2 years down there, it was huge. Going to the retreat center down there, we spent a weekend with the Shipibo, and then the Mariha Kalina, this gentleman who'd never left the forest. They lived like, humans did 500 years ago. Dude, it was an honor just to be in their presence. I was one of the first ones to go get a healing from this man. And he looks at my arms and he's like, in his language, he said, "Oh, medicine man." And that got translated to 3 other languages before it got to mine. I was like, what? I was like, again, I'm so honored just to be in their presence. This guy's looking at me and, comparing me to him. And I was like, whoa. I was like, thank you. But I couldn't see whatever he could. So my arms had crystallized, my tendons, everything was going through some tough stuff, because I went from working nonstop to not working much at all. And he blessed a cup of water with tobacco. I laid down and he used his mouth like a cup, was spitting back in the cup, and he actually let me do a treatment on him. And his wife was looking at him, was looking at me, and she couldn't believe he fell asleep, because most times the indigenous and a lot of shamans, they just don't let people touch them. They're so energy sensitive, especially the white man, so it was an honor. He let me work on him. And then later that week in ceremony, he was the first to consecrate my hands into sacred healing instruments. And I'm sitting here like I would have been sitting in West Hollywood with riots, but instead I sacrificed my credit. I sacrificed my bills. And I just said, what am I going to do? I paid for my storage unit and my cell phone, and I went for my own healing. And oh man, I had to give up my rescue dog. My ex-wife moved to Phoenix, and she took the other one. And obviously, I couldn't take Charlie, my rescue pup, so I had to give her back to her. And that just about created a breakdown, And I'm moving countries. I can't speak the language. I know no one except this woman who I had trust and faith and love. with, and I literally was leaving every comfort zone I possibly could have behind, and I did. It was amazing. It was terrifying, and it was amazing, but it's interesting because you learn how to be calm while the storm is happening around you. We've got the pandemic happening. I've got creditors calling, I've got this and that happening. And I was like, there's nothing I can do right now but heal myself, and take this time, and I know a lot of therapists chose to continue working, behind the scenes, but I also didn't feel that was quite right. I didn't want to put my clients at risk either, so it ended up costing me a year or 2 years worth of work. So instead, I just traveled back for, trips every few months. I'd work 45 days, then I'd go back down. I'd hang out with Maria for a week on the beach, and then I'd go back to the mountains in Rio and go to the retreat center for 2 weeks and go through more sacred ceremonies and more deep healing work. And that really transformed so much of the trauma to where, I come back here now and I was like, whoa, I have so much compassion for everyone that had been here the whole time. It's intense up here, especially if you go ahead.
I'm watching this new documentary. For me, it's a new documentary series called How to Change Your Mind. It talks about from a doctor from, I think, from San Bernardino. And they're talking about how in 1965, they stopped helping people with using LSD. But now it's amazing how they're starting to find that people that are microdosing with LSD, ayahuasca, is actually helping a lot of veterans and first responders struggling with PTSD. And you said something when we talked, you said something that I don't remember exactly, but it was something like a glass of ayahuasca relieve like 3 years of trauma in one glass or something like that. So please talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Down in Brazil, I was introduced to their sacred medicines, and they've been doing these, ceremonies for thousands of years, right? So, yeah, the sacred medicine of ayahuasca is a root and a vine that they mix together, and they pray over it. Everything is completely spiritual, and it's got the God molecule and the DMT. And I'm not going to do a very good job explaining the way a scientist could, but basically the basic understanding is that what the molecule does when you ingest it, it activates all your memory centers. It activates every one of your senses. So your senses are heightened big time. So a lot of times you're reliving that trauma that you've been through, that at the time, obviously, if I were to come in and scream at you, your chemical structure is going to, if you take it on, your chemical structure is going to change. It's going to create a microtoxin, right? Or toxin in your body. So a lot of times the ceremony will have you really taking a deep step inside. Sometimes you have to look at what they refer to as your shadows, some of the traumas you've been through. And, you might relive them for a moment, but sometimes you purge out the toxins that were stored in your body based on those traumatic experiences. So, yeah, man, it was incredible. I did a lot of cleansing and purging, if you will, in the forest from so much trauma that I'd taken on, that you just feel completely different the next day. All of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm not full of anxiety, or wow, I don't feel depression. That's weird. The last ceremony I did, I just took a very small glass, and I had some stomach issues, and yeah, I went to the bathroom 3 times. My waist was tight, and I wasn't feeling those depressive, thoughts or symptoms anymore. It was amazing. It was amazing because you have other people there that are going through the same thing. You have the integration period where a lot of psychologists who've been working with the medicine for 20 years are helping you integrate your experiences. So it's huge for a lot of veterans. People say they want to take their own life, but I look at it different now. That's the ego talking. We call it ego death in the forest, where you're like, I'm going to die. Oh my, all this fear you have. And then you get sick, and all of a sudden you feel better than you ever have in your life because your body removed those toxins from those previous memories. And all of a sudden, like, boop, you're looking around and you're like, how did I get to heaven? Or it's hard to explain, and so many people have different experiences with these things. But yeah, I've heard so many studies about psilocybin.
Yeah.
I'd never done any drugs growing up, never. I think, Santa Maria, I was like 27. I smoked and I was like, this is what this does? I'm really relaxed. What? This is what this does? Why is this illegal? Obviously we know why it's illegal because people can, abuse different things. But yeah, for a lot of the veterans that have been dealing with PTSD, like, it changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. And it's interesting because I went through some trauma going into business with friends years ago and making a really bad business decision where I signed a piece of paper that I thought was a $30,000 loan. It turns out you need lawyers when you go into business with friends. I went from earning $10,000-$15,000 a month to not realizing I didn't even own my own clients and wasn't allowed to call them. I thought he was a silent partner, and the trauma that I went through, bro. I tried going through the antidepressant thing. I didn't even know how to drive a car. They gave me anti-anxiety medicine. I remember taking one and I just black out and I'd wake up and I'm like, oh, where'd my date go? I'm like, this can't be right. And then before I joined Ski Patrol, I took a Reiki Dom stress test for mass casualty victims for a lot of the EMTs. And it's interesting because it's a numerical score, 0 to 100, you got decent stress, 100 to 200, moderate, 300 or above, you can't have normal relationships. You have so much stress in your life. Guess where I was in my late 20s, this one event?
I'd say over 300.
Right. But guess how much? Just for
420.
More than double.
Wow.
985.
Wow.
And that doesn't include stuff that was on the test that I don't even need to discuss. That was super hard to deal with. And mind you, most of this numerical stuff that you're scoring, that's not you. That's other people in your life. Right? So it's so interesting going from a bodybuilder where you have to be completely focused and you're eating 8 meals a day and everything is weighed and measured and you're basically living your life like a soldier. And I did that for many years to become Mr. Utah. And then it's also, you have to have that same level of organization when you're opening a business and you're managing people and you're managing clients and then you start working with people's feelings and emotions. It's like, whoa, so yeah, I really looked at stress differently over the years. And I tell you, for people who just get out of bed and don't necessarily have that routine in the morning where they meditate and have foods, that are good and healthy for them, you can, how should I put this? It's almost hard not to live in anxiety and depression if you just do what normal people do, watching TV, eating fast food, like the chemicals, the stress, we're just not built for that. And we're 70% water. So we take on all this energy, we take on all this electricity. Well, where does it go if we're not grounding ourselves through meditation, or if we're not putting our feet in the earth? Where does all this energy go? You know what I mean? So it's interesting. I've always used like I don't even know what to call it. The story or when you are born, right? You've got 100 candles on your table, bright candles. Little by little, as you experience trauma in life, little by little, those candles start getting blown out. By the time you're 30 years old, how many candles do you have left? You know what I mean? And my goal, whether I was personal training or student mediator or whatever, is how do we relight some of those candles, right? And that's kind of been my mission ever since for people, whether it was removing pain or, or just some, during a session the other day, I said something because a lot of times stuff will just come through and I'll just speak, not judge it. And my client said, dude, you just made my head explode. And I was like, what? What's that? He's like, bro, it's one thing for you to be working on me, but what you just said just completely changed the way and the reason why I was holding stress. He's like, your words. So there's a lot of healing in different aspects that, people have to be ready for. Healing isn't rainbow and sunshine. Sometimes it's crying. It's being in a dark place, snotch running down your face, or speaking to someone and maybe it takes a couple months, but finally they say that one thing and you're like, oh my gosh, you're right. And you get that one piece of information that can change your life, so.
Yeah. So now let's talk about what you're doing now for the last couple minutes. Now,
Yeah.
when we talked on Saturday, you mentioned two of the biggest icons that you're working with, one in the music industry and one in the fitness industry. And it's amazing, I love Mr. Jay Cutler, somebody I highly respect, met him a few times, one of the most humble people you'll ever meet. But, when you mentioned these two names to me, that just blew my mind. One, because I'm a guitar player, and two is because I used to love the show that this other gentleman used to be on. So talk about what you're doing now at this moment, now that you're back.
Now at this moment, I'm out in Santa Monica, California, and recently I've been working with an artist that I helped avoid a disc replacement surgery years ago, Everlast. And I met him years ago, and I said, you've got some misalignments from playing the guitar, and he's got a lot of muscle on him. He's a beefy guy. And I said, so if I get you out of pain, are you going to need that surgery? And he's like, well, no. So I made him go to my chiropractor, and he was frustrated. He's like, this guy wants to take an x-ray. I'm like, I already have an MRI. I'm like, let him take an x-ray. And it was after our second session, he messaged me. He's like, yo, I canceled my surgery. When do you want to see me? And I'm like, I don't know, whenever you need a tune-up. So he messaged me not too long ago and was having some issues, now that he's back getting ready for his tours and stuff. And, a lot of these guys haven't been playing all day long. He was having issues with some hand cramping and stuff. And he's like, yo, dude, I just had to cancel a tour. I think my career might be coming to an end. I was like, bro, you've got an internal rotation. We've got some subscap stuff to work through. I'm like, I got you. Don't worry. He's like, yo, you're my Obi-Wan Kenobi, dude, because my band is waiting to hear it. So yeah, it was really neat. The other day at the last minute, he asked if I could go see him before he flew out to New York. And I was like, yeah, man, I'll be there by 8 p.m. So it's really cool. And I don't post any of that stuff online. You know what I mean? So that was really neat. And then there's it looks like I'll be working with Mike O'Hearn coming up soon, and Mona possibly to kind of give them a demo of what I do. He approached me in the gym, which is really cool because I've had so much respect for him and her over the years. Just, you talk about Jay being one of the most consistent, incredible human beings for the sport of bodybuilding. I put Mike O'Hearn right up there with him, at there or even higher, because he's been so consistent. Yeah. And when you're in the gym at 5 a.m. and the guy's there and he's happy, and then on the other end of things, I told him the one day, I said, man, I see what some people write on your posts. It's crazy, man. I honor you so much for not even being affected by these people who say the meanest things.
Yeah.
And even that in and of itself, being famous, like I remember years ago, I walked around the fitness expo with Brian Wilson, Fear the Beard. He's got a couple World Series rings. And like 3 people asked for my photo. And I was kind of embarrassed. And I was like, I'd love to, and they had him take the picture. And I said to him, I'm like, this doesn't happen. He's like, sure. And it was crazy because like 1,000 people wanted a photo of Brian. Like people were literally walking by, like I could overhear him, like, was that Brian Wilson? They were freaking out, and these guys deal with this everywhere they go, so just to see not only the regiment he has, like the most consistent he's been his entire life, but it's cool being able to see what I can do to help open his physique up. It's going to be exciting, you know. So we're supposed to get together later on this week, so that'll be exciting. And
Well, well,
it's
something that I'm really excited about is I love your brand new website.
thank you,
It's totally amazing. It's easy to navigate, even for a low-tech
thank
red
you.
like me. Talk about your new website.
Yeah, you know, so many people ask me if I only work on bodybuilders, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know, bodybuilders obviously love seeing the changes. They love seeing the before and after pictures. They send their coaches weekly photos, so they always get excited to see how fast I can make their physiques change. So, it was definitely time to update the website. I had a lot of females like, do you work on females? And I joke, I'm like, yeah, it's nice to meet you. All right, get down to your underwear. Let's take pictures. And they're like, okay, I get it. I said, I don't always take before pictures for everyone. I go, if you want them, I love seeing the changes, because a lot of people just don't understand. You know, I do have the license of massage therapist, but I've never referred to myself as that. You know, while I do honor massage therapy, everyone always asks, like, what do I ask for when I go to a place to get what I get from you? I'm like, ask for Jimmy Bluff. You know, ask for surgery without the knife. I'm the only one that does this. I'm like, what? You know, and I channel, you know, I have prayers. I do different things that I don't really speak openly about, because it's like that whole rocket science thing. You know what I mean? But you know, a lot of people and a lot of therapists and healers over the years have confirmed that what I do is very, very unique. So I had to trademark it in a way. And so it's really cool. Now the website is a lot more encompassing with my journeys over the last couple of years to the forest, and everything that I've learned from the forest has really added to my work. You know, like we said earlier, you know, how do you not take on that energy from clients? And that's what I've really been trying to learn over the years. So I don't take, you know, work home with me, but at the same time, I don't bring home to work with me either. You know, I'm an empty container, and when, you know, spirit comes through. It's, you know, I try to just be as powerful as I can, centered, and, you know, every aspect of my life has always evolved throughout my work, like every aspect.
So now, how do we find you? How do we find your website? And we said we are going to throw in something for the veterans and first responders that are watching. So talk to us.
Yeah, so jimmybluff.com. You guys can email me. You can actually, we're in the testing phase, my booking site. You can book treatments. Typically, my single hour rate, just, you know, because if people are coming in for a single hour, I've got to basically soak through my clothes and get them, you know, a lot of results. So my single hour treatment's normally $300. Anyone who wants to mention the show, especially veterans, take $100 off, you know, that hour. And, you know, I can offer anyone a free consultation. I'd be happy to. My Instagram is Jimmy_Bluff. You can check out my Instagram and the before and afters and the testimonies. I'm on Facebook as well, Jimmy Bluff. So yeah, jimmybluff.com. Send me an email. I'm based in Santa Monica. I do travel occasionally. I'm open to being flown to different cities and different countries. I've got private clients who I fly to all the time. And yeah, I've got clients who've had metal rods in their back. I've got clients who've been blown up by, you know, bombs in Iraq and lost different legs and things. So whatever soft tissue related pain, neuromuscular pain, spinal pain, emotional pain that you're storing in the body, I'm all about it. And it's funny, you know, one last little story. I was in Tennessee, and this woman came in, and she's, you know, a very elite individual. Her husband was an executive, and she's looking at me, looking at my tattoos, and I kind of smiled, and I said, I'm the guy that if you saw in an alley, you'd run, you know. And I started working with her, and then we became best friends pretty quick. And by lunchtime, I said to her, I go, you know, I have all these tattoos. She's like, why? I go, because if someone wants to judge me, they just leave me alone. I said to her, but who are you going to call to battle your demons with you? Me. because I'm the guy that's going to hold your hand, walk side by side with you, and assist you out of this pain, because that's what I do for a living. You know what I mean? So my clients become my family, and my client referrals I take seriously, because that's just an extension of family. And when you have people that have been hurting for a very, very long time and are at the point where they just assume they're supposed to hurt forever, I take my job so seriously, man, and I wear my emotion on my sleeve. I have to, right? Because I don't work on other people. If my mom's on the table, it's almost like I'm working on me, on the table. But at the same time, if someone else's mom is working on the table, that's no different than my mom. I'm going to give them everything I possibly give my own mother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Jimmy, you're amazing, brother. I love you.
Brother, I love you.
You've been such a great friend over all these years, and I just want to say thank you. So, guys, definitely check out his website. His Instagram is amazing. Check out his IG. He's totally amazing. And I want to thank our sponsors. Like I said, thank you, Physics Zero. Thank you, Seven. And thank you, Maxwell Soaps, for making all this happen. Guys, I always end with this quote by Mrs. Oprah Winfrey. And I think it went back to one of her heroes. And they said, if you want to help somebody, and if you want to help yourself, help somebody else. Yep. So guys, if you're struggling out there with anything, sometimes it helps just to help somebody else. Jimmy,
I love you, brother. Thank you so much for your time, the opportunity, and anytime you want to chat, I'm here. Anyone wants to reach out, you want a consultation, you want a full-on overhaul, and you want to fit in your clothes different tomorrow, we can make that happen.
All right.
So just God bless you, brother, for what you're doing. And again, all the veterans and servicemen out there, I feel you. I appreciate you. I love you. Thank you for protecting us. Thank you for serving your country.
And guys, just remember the 3 most important words in the English language. Today, I decide. So if you want to change your life, make a decision today. Guys, remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. And I'll see you guys.
Amazing.
All right, Jimmy, take it easy,
brother. All right, brother. Thank you so much. God bless.